So this is the entire iPhone 13 lineup, starting off with the iPhone 13 mini, the iPhone 13, the iPhone 13 Pro, and finally the big boy iPhone 13 Pro Max. The big difference this year is you're getting different colors as per usual, and you're also getting a few updates. It's a very incremental year, but there's some important features that I think a lot of people are going to appreciate. Let's start off with the iPhone 13 mini. And right off the bat, you can tell that they're no longer using that shrink wrap that goes around the devices. Instead, they switched to a pull tab, which is a lot more environmental friendly. Now, you still don't get a charger in the box, and quite frankly, that's probably never coming back. So the boxes are significantly thinner than they used to be. Now, I'm really digging this blue of the iPhone 13 mini. Like, look at this thing. It has this nice pastel blue. It's not as dark as the previous iPhone 12, so you're getting a lighter shade. This is the old iPhone 12 in a darker blue, and this is the lighter one. Inside the box, it's pretty much equal across the board. You get a USB Type-C to Lightning connector, and of course you get a bunch of paperwork and stickers, plus that SIM tool so you can insert your SIM card. Next up on the list is the iPhone 12. And when I saw this pink, and I like a nice pink, but when I saw this pink, I was like, you know what? This is a good tone. And of course, it's the same size as the previous iPhone 12. Now the iPhone 13 Pro I have here comes in a gold color. It's very muted, but it has this classy look, right? It's not too much in your face compared to previous gold colors that Apple used to offer. Like, it still has that contrasty gold, like surrounding the edges of the device, but the actual glass back is very muted compared to before. And the last one up is the Sierra Blue. This is the new color that Apple is now offering on the iPhone 13 Pro Max. Again, it's not as dark as the blue on the iPhone 12 or even the iPhone 12 mini, but it just looks so good, you know? Especially because Apple uses this like stainless steel edge, which kind of like flashes the blue around, giving it a more contrasty look. And then when you look at the back of the device, it's a bit more muted. Now this year, the iPhones are a little bit heavier and they're a little bit thicker to incorporate a bigger battery. I also noticed that the camera bump is bigger than the previous one. As you can see here, you can tell that the iPhone 13 Pro Max camera bump sticks out a little bit more. They improved the cameras again. They have wider sensors, so a bigger bump is obviously called for. The other way to tell the difference between the iPhone 13 and iPhone 12 is the camera air rate. On the old 12, the camera arrangement is in a vertical position, whereas on the 13, they decided to make it go diagonal. I guess they needed more space, so they had no choice. Now, here's the thing. These are a bit heavier and a bit chunkier, and all your old cases from your iPhone 12 will not work with these devices. In fact, I just tried and I couldn't even get the case in. So you will have to buy a brand new case if you are picking up one of these devices. The second thing is they improved the size of the notch. It is a little bit smaller. It is noticeable, but I don't think a lot of people are going to care, because you're not really gaining any screen real estate. Like, all your vertical screen real estate stays exactly the same because the thickness of the notch is identical to the previous iPhone 12 lineup. The only place they shrunk it was on the sides, and they really didn't add any extra icons or indicators to utilize that extra space. It's smaller, but it's not going to make a difference in your daily life. Now, the first thing I noticed on the Pro was the high refresh display, and it makes a massive difference. Now, don't get me wrong, Apple does make a great 60 Hz display, but it just doesn't compare to 120 Hz. I've been enjoying this feature on Android devices for years, and it took this long for Apple to finally bring it here. And I think for the regular user, upgrading from an 11 or 12 or even an older device will notice the difference. They'll perceive it as a speed boost. I'm also thankful because last year, if I wanted to have the best camera in the iPhone, you had to opt for the iPhone 12 Pro Max because it had a slightly different wide camera. But this year, the wide camera is standard across the board. Doesn't matter if you pick up the 13, the 13 Pro, or 13 Pro Max, it has the exact same wide camera, which means you're gonna get consistent photography across all iPhones. Now, of course, you do get the telephoto lens on the Pro models, and this year they go up to 3 times. This is a boost from 2.5 compared to last year, so you can get a little bit closer than you could before. On top of that, they're bringing sensor shift to the iPhone 13 normal too, so that means when you're recording video and you're moving around or taking a picture, there's much better stabilization, and it will make a difference in the types of photos you're taking. Unfortunately though, the front-facing camera is exactly the same. They didn't improve it. It's the same as the previous model, so there's no upgrades there. Another cool feature they brought exclusively to the iPhone 13 lineup is cinematic mode, and I saw the example of this. It looks cool, but I'm still kind of like thinking, who is this really for? You know, I don't think like everyone's just gonna go run around and start producing movies with their smartphone. Either way, it's a cool start. And what it does is it pulls focus. So let's say I'm talking and the focus is on me, the background is blurred, it's doing this artificially, and someone else comes into frame, and let's say I turn around or move away, it'll automatically pull focus to the other object. It can do it automatically, or you can do it manually, and it gives you that cinematic effect. The downfall though is that you can only record at 1080p and 30 frames per second, so you can't get that crispy 4K footage that the iPhone is capable of. And also because it's doing it at 1080p, my guess is you need a lot of light to make this feature look really good. Battery life is going to be much better on all of these iPhones because they increased the battery size. Even the Mini, which didn't have the best battery life last year, should provide better battery life. Like, even getting an extra hour or 2 hours on this thing will make it a much more capable device. I loved the battery life in the iPhone 12 Pro Max and the iPhone 12. I got through the entire day without any problems. I can take it into the next. So if they're gonna be giving me another hour to 2 hours of use, that's pretty amazing feature nonetheless. Specifically, the iPhone 12 Pro I stopped using last year because the battery life wasn't that great, but I have a feeling this year it's gonna be excellent. One other thing about the display that I forgot to mention is the brightness. On the previous iPhone, it was 625 nits of brightness. The new iPhone 13 goes up to 800 nits, which is the same as last year's iPhone 12 Pro and 12 Pro Max. The iPhone 13 Pro and 13 Pro Max goes up to 1000 nits of brightness, and they all share a same peak brightness of 1200 nits. On top of that, I think the most exciting feature is the macro mode. A lot of Android manufacturers have done this in the past, but what they usually do is just slap on some crappy little 2 megapixel macro camera, and it's usually pretty garbage. I've been playing around with some of the shots in this phone, and the way that Apple is doing it makes the pictures look significantly better. I don't think it's perfect because you can't manually change to and from the macro camera, but once you're in that macro mode and you're up close, I think the shots look fantastic. And finally, performance. Apple introduced the A15, and you can find it in the iPad mini and all the iPhone 13s. I'm gonna do a little Geekbench test for you enthusiasts out there so you can see the scores, but the RAM situation is exactly the same. Still 6 gigabytes of RAM in the Pro model, which is the same as the iPhone 12 Pro. And of course, you have 4 gigabytes of RAM in the iPhone 13, which is exactly the same as the iPhone 12. So the scores are in, and as you can see, the single core and multi-core clock speeds are faster on the A15. It's not a huge jump, but it's still an improvement. And if you compare this to what Android phones are doing, Apple is still miles ahead. So there you have it, Apple's brand new iPhone 13 and iPhone 13 Pro. There's a lot of other things I need to talk about and test, like filters, really put the battery life and camera system to work. Most importantly, I do these unboxings so that you guys can drop your questions for my full review. And if you're interested in seeing the full review, make sure to head over to my main channel because that's where I'm gonna post it. Like the video if you liked it, subscribe if you haven't already, and I'll see you guys in the next one.